this thing's preset at 14.9, and I'm going to go from my pencil marks, not necessarily the edge of the wood. And that's where I know my straight edge needs to be. So from that line there, right over to there, 14.9 centimeters, and we're ready to route. I know this piece fits in every single box at the corner, so I'm going to use it as a guide. Shape these lids and bottoms. Jeez, I don't know if you caught that, but a 10-foot limb of a tree just fell down and brushed against my arm. Could have been a disaster. That fit pretty good. Clamp it up and wait. So now we can see where the dovetails are protruding, and they do it on both sides, both surfaces. So I can't run the router flat on one surface because it'll wobble. Pack it up with a piece of plywood just in from the dovetail, and that way we can flush cut it. What we're getting ready to do right now is to sink feet like this in all four corners of the chest, and I want them to be embedded in the wood. So I'm making a mold to guide my router again. Obviously my cuts weren't very perfect. I've wrapped this with tape so I can remove it easily. Much did the job. When that's dry, we can sand that surface flush, and it'll act as a guide for the base of the router. Those are the skid pads that I want to embed, and where you see light shining through there is where my cuts weren't accurate, and that's actually clear epoxy. So when I take out that plug, we're going to have a perfect mold. Bang. Well, I don't know if you can see those, but those are saw marks, and if I use the orbital sander, I'm going to risk widening my gap or making my gap between the lid and the box uneven. So I'm going to use this approach. I just got that fence set up to take about a coin's worth of material off, and I've done it on 3 sides. That's a very big improvement. We'll give it a light sand by hand, but no machines. What we're doing now is making locator plugs, which will protrude about whatever that depth is, and in one side they'll be protruding, and in the matching side they'll go into an exact copy of that hole there. And that just makes sure that over the years our lids don't deviate from their original locations. Now it's time to make a lock like this fit in. Those things go up and grab out and retract. So I've got the slot there. I've got to adjust for this plate, and I've got to drill for the keyhole. You don't want to get that wrong because the thing is tiny.
And the first thing I'm going to do is take care of the bottom so I don't have to keep flipping them back and forth. First coat's got to be sanding sealed. Once that's dry, we'll sand it down with 220 and hit it with lacquer.
Well, I think this came out of a tree called Japanese cedar. Pretty wicked grain. It died in my yard last year, and I resawed it, and the small pieces, I wanted to make use of them, so I'm embedding them. And it's more fragrant than the stuff we line closets with back in the States. So I'm hoping that the smell will remain in this chest. That's great. It's protruding just a little bit so that when I sand it, it'll be flush. That's the base coat sanded. Now we're going to put lacquer on and repeat that process 3 more times. I see a flaw. That's natural wood, but it's unsightly. And what I'm going to do is lay that in. That piece of wood has grain that looks to me like it'll mask pretty good. So that's unacceptable, and we've got to deal with that. Well, I don't expect you all to be able to guess what that's going to be, but I'll give you a hint. He wants that seared into the cedar, and I've got to find a way to do it exactly 3 times. So we're making a brand. The first one I just threw in the scrap bin. So from this side, I got the D shape right, but when you turn it over and burn it in, it comes out backwards. Back to the drawing board. Well, my brand idea wasn't as brilliant as I thought it would be. Got this 200-watt soldering iron, ground the tips to be sharp at one end and rounder on the other side. Okay, give that a sand and see how that turned out. It took me a lot of time to cultivate the courage to dedicate. And for now, we're going to let that speak for itself, sand it, and tomorrow we'll see what the result is. Well, this little nail here had to get snipped at an angle because the lock is just about that distance in from the wood. And I pre-drilled a hole and put some epoxy in there. Okay, let that sit and we're good to go.